Hello, everybody, and welcome back to A Critical Look. That's the arbitrary show where we talk about stuff that isn't album reviews or music in some way or another. And today we'll be discussing what?
El Camino.
And what's the full name? Do you know? A Breaking Bad movie or something like that?
Yeah, Breaking Bad movie, El Camino.
That's the one. And my name is Holden, Stephan Roy.
And I'm Mike Tzintziras.
And if you have not seen this movie, and you have every intentions of watching El Camino, this is going to be so full of spoilers that we highly recommend you don't watch this without watching the movie first, because we're doing a little deeper dive styled review where we have a conversation. We finna go through the whole plot. We're going to talk about whatever we feel like talking about as we go through it based on what we remember. I've personally seen the movie twice.
Just like me.
And that gives me enough qualifications, in my opinion, to let you know what I think so far. I mean, that's more than once. Because once, you miss stuff. Second time, you catch some stuff. Plus, I actually watched that 15-minute behind-the-scenes video that's on Netflix for it, where they
I didn't see that yet.
Where they pointed out a couple little things that I would not have caught all by myself.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, let us know what you think as we go through this. We look forward to hearing all your comments. And if you just want to tell us what you thought about the movie, are you excited for it? Do you think there's going to be a new Breaking Bad movie? Is that something that you actually want in the world? Anyway, let's have a discussion down in the comment sections. On that note, I say we get into it. I don't really know where to start except at the very beginning, which opens with this scene of Jesse and Mike. Y'all remember Mike. He's the guy that did all this stuff. Actually, before we get to the movie, let's talk quickly about Breaking Bad.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel we should definitely break down Breaking Bad, considering that's what the whole movie's based on.
So I don't think we should break down Breaking Bad. I think we should talk about how we felt about Breaking Bad briefly, and then kind of building up into this movie, our expectations.
Okay.
So since I've already talked a whole bunch, what do you think about Breaking Bad, and what were you expecting in terms of happy or sad, or were you excited for El Camino, that kind of thing?
Well, I was excited for it because I was a huge fan of Breaking Bad. It was actually one of my favorite TV shows, along with The Wire and Sopranos and stuff. And one thing I found Breaking Bad did well was the way they ended it. They didn't leave it like Sopranos did, which left you which left you confused. And that's what I feel Breaking Bad did well. They gave you a good conclusion, and this was just for the fans. I feel this was something that was just done for people who feel they didn't have enough. Better Call Saul wasn't enough for them. So I feel
that is a good show. I forgot about that.
So I feel for people who are good fans of Breaking Bad, some feel that Better Call Saul wasn't enough for them. So this was just giving you an extra, pretty much, conclusion of it, a more in-depth conclusion as what happened when Jesse got out there. That's what I feel this was really
because
about.
It did leave that on a bit of a cliffhanger.
Yeah, because people were wondering what happened. What does Jesse do once he's out? Is he gonna be a criminal? Is he gonna be an outlaw? What's gonna happen? And I feel this was just giving those people an idea of what Jesse did after.
Plus the actor behind Jesse, I think his name's Aaron something.
Aaron Paul.
He is an executive producer of the El Camino movie, so he was involved in putting the whole thing together. Fun fact that I learned, this was a very secretive endeavor, as in what they only let people in on a need-to-know basis. People who auditioned for the movie had to come to them to read off their only script. It was really protected so that it got released when it was ready to be released. And they kind of talked to all of the actors, and they were describing the process of being recruited for the movie.
Yeah, so there were no leaks.
Yeah, it was really cool to see all that. But for myself, Breaking Bad was an experience where I feel like I was a victim of my youth watching it, where I didn't necessarily understand why everybody thought the show was as amazing as it is. I'll be honest with y'all, the first couple of seasons, not my favorite. Seasons 3 through 5 are truly something special. Really, season 3 of Breaking Bad is one of the most memorable and enjoyable seasons of TV, I think, out there.
Yeah, I think part of that for me, I feel, was also due to the cousins in that, because of those are just characters. If you want to just talk about a character on the show, who they didn't have to say anything for their presence to be felt.
Everything about the way that was done. And now, in hindsight, as I remember it now, and I'm recognizing how good it is. But at the time, a lot of what made the silence, the use of sounds, all of the really things that were shot, it's almost like Breaking Bad was the punk alternative to the overproduction of something like a Prison Break, which I know you like a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm not trying to diss the show. I'm saying it's the opposite, right? It's so theatrical. It's so over the top. Whereas Breaking Bad is so stripped down and so bare bones, but to a point of raw.
Noir.
And so, as like a 32-year-old today, I'm like so into the style of what Breaking Bad brings because I can empathize with how good it is in terms of it. Even watching this El Camino, just as a little bit of a spoiler, I was so impressed with how they moved the story along. Like the actual technical side of the show is or the movie even is ridiculous. I'm not gonna maybe talk about that as much as I should, so I figured I should bring it up now while people are still watching. It's technically like the way they shoot shit. It's just so interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
But younger me, who actually watched the show, missed most of that and didn't appreciate the nuances of an episode about a fly. You know, where they anyway. But now, so I came into this El Camino thing with an expectation of 0, as in Mike wanted to review it, so I was like, okay. And then I started watching it, and the nostalgia hit me, and I'm like, okay. And I guess we'll get into it at now-ish. I don't know. I don't have a lot more to comment here.
Neither do I. I just want to say that, like, for me, my expectation wasn't much. I was one of the people who was a fan of the show, but I felt it ended perfectly. So this to me was just as an extension.
Were you, just on that note, were you afraid at all that it would suck and it would like hurt the legacy? Because like, I'll be honest, I haven't seen the last season of Better Call Saul, but I really enjoyed the 3 seasons I have seen of it.
Yeah, I saw the first 3 seasons as well. I enjoyed it, but like the thing is, like, I was afraid it was gonna suck, as in the fact of, as I said, I felt it ended perfectly.
Right.
And I just didn't want it to be like something that would just ruin something that was done well. And I feel that personally it did not do it. I felt it did what it needed to do, just fill the void that some people had.
Well, we'll get into that now.
Yeah.
And it starts off, and honestly, seeing Mike and Jesse standing there, I believe the placement is they're at the part of like season 5 when they've got their thing running, and Jesse's like, I'm out, and they're having a little conversation on the side. Jesse kind of asks Mike, you know, where would you go start over? And Mike in this whole scene is being very indifferent, very much like, Jesse, I'm not at all going to influence your decisions. You got to be accountable for what you need to do what you think is best. We see Jesse reaffirm how it's like the moment of clarity in his life when he's like, I'm out, and then he kind of peer pressures Mike, come on dude, just fucking play along and have some conversation. I thought that was funny, that scene, the way that played out. And basically Mike's like, I'd go to Alaska. It's somewhere you could start over, you know, kind of get out there. But what was truly really interesting was when Jesse's like, I could basically make amends for the things I've done. And then Mike just kind of cuts him off really starkly, and he's like, no, that's like the one thing you can't do. You can start over, you can hide, you can do a lot of different things, right?
But you can't right your wrongs.
Oh, I just realized this is foreshadowing for a central plot point in the movie that it just really clicked, because in the real Breaking Bad at this point, Mike links him up with dude we're going to talk about later. That's actually pretty good. That's like, if you're a real fan of the show, you're going to fully appreciate that maybe on your second watch more than your first watch, eh?
Yeah. Because I watched it the second time today after I saw it when it first came out, and I was noticing some things I didn't notice the first time, which is why, as you mentioned earlier, it's good to watch things a second time.
Well, at least if you're going to talk about it on a camera.
Definitely. But yeah, based on that whole scene, like, yeah, Jesse's just like wants to know how he can just pretty much like start over, brand new all over again, because if he has his money right now, and he wants to know what he can do just to be a brand new self, because he wasn't really happy about what's been going on over there in that part of his life. So when Mike told him Alaska, he was like, okay, perfect, thinking if he could just go down there and right all his wrongs. But then Mike just tells him, that's one thing that you can't do. He's like, yeah.
That's what I've always loved about just Mike's character, and I like that it starts with him because I feel like he's just such a stark realist.
I feel it was everybody's favorite character. A lot of people
who doesn't
have
like
him.
Mike?
Yeah, a lot of people had him as his favorite. Me personally, it was him.
I would say Saul is my favorite.
Okay.
I really like Saul Goodman.
Me, it's Mike and the Cousins.
Mike is like a close number 2, but Saul Goodman's fun. He didn't make an appearance in this, eh?
Nope.
Oh, that's sad. Anyway, but yeah, that's kind of just what it is in that scene, and then yeah, it flows right into an immediate cut into, I guess we're gonna call it, like, the way this movie is told is through a series of flashbacks mixed with the main plot narrative. So we'll call the main plot narrative is present day Jesse, and we'll establish early on how we can distinguish him. But the main differentiator is going to be the beard. I lied. We established it now. So we cut to the part where present day Jesse still has a beard. It's immediately
the end of Breaking Bad, pretty much.
Side note, before we get into it, the set designer was describing how a lot of the clothes that were used in the show just don't exist, as in they're not in print anymore. So they basically had to get used clothes together and recreate almost all the clothing.
Well, from that time.
To replicate it, but to get the exact shirt that Jesse wore in the scene that he wore. So the one that you see in Breaking Bad is a different shirt. They had to recreate it from scratch to replicate it. And I just have to say, knowing that level of because I watched that before I watched it the second time. So I was thinking about this as I was going through and just seeing the attention to detail. Because regardless of plot, which I'm going to touch on at the end, the attention to detail that went into creating this, I thought was truly profound, like truly like next level freaking awesome. But yeah, so it cuts to the present and he's just got a beard on. And
he's driving the El Camino, pretty much the end of Breaking Bad.
And he's yelling.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, like just finally proud that like all his enemies are gone.
And he basically is driving whatever, and he sees some cops coming and whatnot, and he ducks around, I think.
What happens is, like, he sees, like, a driveway and a house. So he just slowly turns in there, grabs the gun, and lies down in the back seat, just in case the cops are going to come at him.
And then they just go boom, 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 and then he ends up getting out of it, and he drives on over, and it kind of cuts to everyone's favorite sidekicks, Skinny Pete and Badger. And I'm not going to lie, I really do like their characters from Breaking Bad. They were some of my favorite parts of that show. Were those two? They really were. They were the comic relief that really balanced out that show. And just seeing them there. Now, I'll be completely honest with you. The way it switches from a car driving, then you're seeing like the windshield of him driving, and it just transitions directly into a digital 3D animation, and then it cuts back and you realize it switches into the racing game that Badger or whatever them are playing. I think Skinny Pete's playing.
Yeah,
and
Skinny
it just
Pete's playing and he crashes, and all of a sudden he goes back. And then,
but it was just the transition of how it seamlessly goes from this background of like a desert into the video game background, and that transition is, I think, one of the cooler shots of transitioning scenes. I think it ranks high on the list of ones I've seen in my life in terms of memorability for me. So I thought that was super cool. And then they're just insult each other for a while, and I'm just like, okay. I kind of got bored personally with that, but I could also see how some people, like you, may have appreciated them just dissing each other.
It made me smile. This nostalgia of seeing them on screen made me happy, because to me it was just like memory of those guys. Like, they were fun parts of the show, and just to see them again, like, it was more like he's like, yeah, well, you drive worse than my dead grandma and stuff.
So to give him credit, when he goes, oh, yeah, well, you drive the short bus, whatever. And he's like, nah, I'd be too distracted because you'd be in the front seat with a helmet on, humping me.
Humping my leg, yeah.
It was funny, but it took like a minute to like get through that. And I recognize that this show's pacing in general is that, but I felt if you're not into that minute, it's a long minute.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah.
And I wasn't 100% in. It does build that punchline at the end is fucking funny. But then the door knocks, thankfully, breaks the tension, opens it up. Skinny Pete's like, "Who the fuck are you?" Turns out it's Jesse Pinkman.
He's like, "You lost, bro?" Then he just realizes who it is. Badger's like, "Yo, who is it, man?" Then he just comes up and he pauses after he acknowledges who it was.
Yeah.
The beard was a big throw off.
And so they're like, okay. And they comes in and he's like, I got to get this car off the street, and they give him the car, and they bring it into the backyard of Pete's house, and then they come back in, and
He's eating ramen noodles,
but he's not just
aggressively.
eating it, devour
Aggressively.
it, and it's just like, whoa! It's like almost like you can tell he's treating this ramen like things like you treat like turkey at grandma house type shit, like when you don't get that special meal, because I guess coming from the captivity he's been in, this has got to be the most delicious tasting food this man has ever had in his entire life, and he's just devouring it. I don't know. That's one of those scenes where,
Like, you understand, like, that he
So-
was in starvation type thing, too.
to give the dude his credit as an actor, I think he carries the movie in a big way for how there are a lot of dramatic moments that I find corny in this movie that will play out. Like, it just seems like it's constantly dramatic in a sense, constantly tense. But the way, I think it's Aaron, you said,
Aaron Paul.
Aaron Paul composes himself, especially at this part with the trauma and stuff, the way he just carries it, I find it believable. And I find it, like, really good. I think he does a really excellent job at being this post-traumatic stress disorder driven Jesse Pinkman on the run, and I have to just give him his kudos for that. Everyone else felt a little bit more like, okay, that's like a throwback to who they were in the show, whereas
He's only, like, developed character where you see fully the transition.
yes, that's a lot of what I'm trying to convey there. So I thought that was really, really dope. But yeah, he comes in, he eats his noodles, then he
Lies
goes
down
to
straight.
they goes to bed, and then they kind of cut to the news going on. So clearly Badger and Pete have been watching the news the next day. He wakes up, they're like, whatever, I think they turn off the news.
Yeah,
or-
like Jesse just walked. Well, first, we have to remember, he wakes up, he looks at the ceiling.
yeah, the post-
Yeah,
okay, right,
exactly.
right.
Based on this is a huge moment for it. He wakes up, he looks at the ceiling, and he realizes he's in a room, and he starts whipping off the curtains aggressively because he still thinks he's locked up somewhere.
And then they walk up and behind
Yeah,
him.
and then he just grabs the gun, points it at the door, and they're like, yo, Jesse, it's us, it's us, it's us, it's just us, you're safe. And, like, that just shows how he was still, like, in the post-traumatic part, because he didn't, like, he just crashed. Like, he just ate the noodles and just head first collapsed, and, like, Skinny Pete was just looking at him. Badger's like, yo, you gotta check this on TV. He's like, I don't want to watch TV. He's like, it's the news, bro.
Right,
And
right.
then it cuts to this part in the morning when they're just chilling out. Then he just sees that, then, like, yeah, it just shows, like, how crazy he was. And, like,
And then they ask if it's true if he was locked in a cage, and you can tell he doesn't really want to talk about it, but he says yes. They go out, they get him to take a shower. He has like another flashback scene.
yeah, of when he was being hosed down in captivity. And, like, one part we also have to mention about that, like, the shower part was, like,
All the scars.
yeah, like, you just see, like, slowly, when then he's like, is it true that you were locked up in the cage? Did they really have you locked up in the cage? He just slowly closes the door, but also Skinny Pete told him he should keep the beard to
Yeah.
hide himself.
And yeah, man, it's just funny. You can see how Badger the whole time is just trying to be like, yeah, buddy, anything you need. And Skinny Pete's like, you gotta listen to me, dog. And then, like, Badger's like, shut the fuck up. I'm gonna say this is like a summary of their interactions,
Yeah.
but the way they play off camera, I'll give it to it. Skinny Pete does show growth. He steps up to the occasion very shortly.
Because he's the one, like, who really shows effort into help.
Yeah.
Because, like, something I'm going to get to later on, he's the one who's more interested in making sure Jesse's okay. Because of, like, first, like, he's like, yo, you want to shower, man? Like, you want to eat
Yeah.
something? Like, he's taking care of him.
Whereas
And-
whereas Badger seems to be more worried about the emotional side of what he's gone through. So I thought that was an interesting thing. Basically, we can feel his pain. It feels like, so on the one hand, it really does its job well to convey what it's trying to. On the other hand, it is very thick, if you know what I mean. Like, it's very laying it on real thick. Like, it's the type of thing where it's sprung out over a couple of episodes, It
Yeah.
really, I feel like, would have been a better pacing, and I feel like they took like a 45-minute exploration
Yeah.
into his post-traumatic stress disorder and squished it into this like 2 to 3 minute like moment. And you know what? It did its job. It communicated what it had to do, but it just did it in a
Like,
way
it felt rushed.
where it feels like a little overkill.
Yeah, but also, like, yeah, when, like you said, like, he walked out of the room and they turn off the TV, he's like, why'd you turn it off? And he was
Yeah.
like, He's like, is it that bad? He's like, it's just all about it, all about you.
And then they basically come out and they call up that old guy from the salvage yard, and he's like another little Easter egg. He comes
Yeah.
through, but he's like watching Jesse on the news as he like takes the call. He's like, "Yeah, everybody knows who it is," and I'm like, "That's the fucking worst line
like,
in the movie."
Yeah, he's like, at this point, who doesn't?
To me, that was the
Yeah.
worst line in the movie. It was
Yeah.
like, okay, but he shows up and he like is like, yeah, y'all help me out, and you see him like going over the car in the backyard with this little dingy, and then it's a low jack, which I assume is a thing that tells the 5-0s if the car has been stolen. So
Yeah, I never heard about that until this
me
either.
neither.
So
But I assumed what it was more than I knew what it was. So we see him about to take the car, and then it just starts beeping, and he runs away, and he graciously tells them that the cops are coming and whatever. So then Jesse is going to take the car and run, which, you know, would have been bad because there's the beeper on it. So instead, Skinny Pete thinks on the fly, and they do this car swapping thing. So basically,
yeah, Badger takes Skinny Pete's car.
yes, because the story
Yeah.
is to just go is that Skinny Pete's gonna tell the cops that that Jesse showed up and they traded pink slips because he's always wanted El Camino and it would be real cool. So that justifies the car being there, and also Skinny Pete's not in trouble because it's a legit thing. You're allowed to do that, right?
Yeah.
Simultaneously, Badger is going to take Skinny Pete's car, which is the one that everyone thinks Jesse's now driving, down south close to the Mexico border, drop it off, but in a way where it could still be found by the cops. And then meanwhile, Jesse is going to take Badger's car, which is unrelated to the whole situation, and he's going to go do his thing and get away clean because Badger's not involved in the situation at all.
And apparently, Skinny Pete says it's not a car that any criminal would be caught in.
Fair enough. Yeah, the banter between it is really hilarious. I do have to give it credit. Those two dudes have a lot of great chemistry on screen together, and they made that scene enjoyable for me. Like, as much as I'm saying it's over the top, because like especially after he drives away and then he pulls in like this, and all the cops are like tearing by, and he's just like, or take my hat so that you
Yeah,
can.
that's one scene that's one part of the scene when like he's like, hold up before you go. He's like take that. He's like, it'll make them harder to find you. But then when Jesse just turns around, he was like,
Why are you
yo,
doing
Pete,
all this?
why are you doing all this? He's like, and you're my hero and shit, man.
Yeah, and then he like, and I'm like, okay, like it's cute, and I like it. But I like it because it's corny. Not,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
found like it shows that these guys who are all comedy to the show and all fun, they can add some emotional part to it, emotional part as well. Which is why I thought like, because despite all that, you have to look at the history that the characters have. How Jesse and Skinny Pete were like the entire part of the show, and like how that just sums up their last appearance when he just let him know why he's there for him, because legit Jesse was his hero based on everything that Jesse overcame.
And all of the way he set it up. Like, usually if you see a person and you're making moves with him, and Jesse basically created up, like the reason that Skinny Pete has that house is because of Jesse, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really cool.
And one part that I want to bring up was when they asked Skinny Pete goes up to Jesse before Badger left. He's like, "Yo, you got any money?" Then he goes out and gives him everything. Then Badger starts counting, and he's like, "Yo, man, just make sure Badger gives
To
him
be
everything."
fair, if you look, Skinny Pete gave him like 5 bills and Badger gave him fucking 8 grand or something like that,
Yeah.
you know? So I could understand how Badger felt that way, but
Well, Skinny Pete just handed him everything he had without
I
even
know,
looking.
but it was a
Yeah, I
tiny
know,
amount,
yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Versus Badger pulls out this
No, but-
fat freaking
yeah.
stack, and he's like, okay, like, I'll give him a bunch. And then he goes, dude. And I'm like, I get it,
But it just shows like how Skinny Pete was just showing like,
mad love.
yeah, exactly, in that way, just making sure that Jesse's gonna survive this. Okay, that's why Jesse asked him, "Why are you doing all this?" So, but then to go on to what you were saying earlier, yeah, Jesse just stops in the car, literally when he sees all the cops coming, just sits back like this, and just makes sure he sees all the cars coming.
But the first cop saw him pull up and stop like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
But then the other ones just drove by because they think that they're about to pick him up because of the car is at Skinny Pete's place.
And then the next part of the movie, which is basically what we'll call the second act,
Yeah.
is this big old back and forth flashback scene. So simultaneously, we have the flashback scene. So this is how it starts. It cuts back to Jesse is lying in the cage with
You're in
his
captivity.
beard. And Todd shows up and is like, "You awake, buddy?" And so we go through this like one plot line that we'll call the flashback scene, and basically they deal with a murder situation. Spoilers, but you know that because you watched a movie.
Yeah.
So there's the murder flashback plot line, and then simultaneous to that, because basically they interlope like for the next
Yeah.
40 minutes or so, and then we have the search for the money, which is the present day scene. So, I mean, I don't know the best way to go through
Well,
it.
let's just go through the flashback right away because it's
And then we'll go through the search, because now the way they introduce the two scenes is a little bit brilliant, because they both take place kind of at this apartment that is Todd's personal apartment.
exactly, yeah.
And this is also a crime scene after the fact, because Todd, I guess, was slain in the
Well,
finale.
Todd was murdered. Jesse strangled him with the chains.
Right.
So the thing was, because Todd was murdered, and based on how he was murdered, involved in the whole meth lab place as well, he was linked to a crime scene. So his place was being investigated. And
Right.
yeah.
So what we see in the present time is I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. So I do remember this initial sequence is Todd kind of comes in, and Todd's whole relationship with Jesse, I mean, it's like Jesse's his pet is a good way to put it. Like he has to take care of him.
He shows him like some sort of love.
But it's not like real love, because you can see that Todd's character is missing the base emotions that would have the empathy for right and wrong in the way, say, most of us watching the show would feel.
Todd is fully emotionless, I find, in general, because
I would disagree with that, because as we'll get to, he feels emotions, but not in, like, I would not call him a sociopath. I would call him somebody that's more on a spectrum where he doesn't make logical deductions and understandings the same way. So in his mind, something like, well, my uncle said, if you try to run away, I got to commit a murder. That line of reasoning makes sense.
He's like, yeah, if you try to escape, then we're gonna have to visit the boy.
And so that, it's not something he wants to do. He has sadness at the thought of it. But
he's like, it's not something I want to do, but it's what my uncle promised, and my uncle wants to honor his promise.
So out of an obligation to his uncle and his sense of duty and his role in life, which is twisted, he feels he must do terrible things like this. But you can also see that it's not like I think he feels emotions, just in a way that he processes the emotions.
When he killed the woman in Breaking Bad, he's like, I'm sorry, nothing personal. And then he just shoots her in the head. But that's what I mean. Like, even when he had to kill the other boy in the other episode, the boy who spotted them at the methylamine robbery, like, the boy just waves at them. They all wave back. Then he just walks up, like it's nothing.
But I feel like it's more like he suppresses his emotions, but he has them deep down inside. And because he says, I don't want to think about it. Like, if we talk about just jumping ahead in the murder scene.
Okay, he's like, yeah, that's my cleaning lady. And honestly, I don't want to talk about it.
So what's really cool about this movie is that we can get into a psychological discussion about the character of Todd, and I feel like they put his character on display enough to really allow us to do that. Because I believe that it's not so much that he doesn't feel. I believe it's more that he's, again, like I said, suppressing it, because he doesn't want to talk about it, because if he talks about it, he has to think about it, and if he thinks about it, he gets sad, and that breaks the way he stays numb. Like, the way he acts, it's like he keeps himself numb. He prevents himself from feeling. It's more like, I guess, the way a drug addict would stay numb to commit bad actions than it is somebody that's truly, like, sociopathic who really doesn't feel. So it's more like Todd's got his own version of post-traumatic crap that's going on that kind of allows him to commit as almost like a survival mechanism because of the atrocities that he has to do on such a regular basis.
Yeah, but like, based on what you were saying about how he sees Jesse as a pet, I'm gonna go based on that, as in like, yeah, like for example, there was one episode in Breaking Bad when he was like, yeah, you did a 92% purity thing today. So he was like, we have some Ben and Jerry's, and I just wanted to reward you with some of that since you did such a great job. And like then like when he saw Jesse in the morning, he was like, hey, you want a cigarette? Then he hands him one through the little thing. So I find like he just shows like little things like a pet like that. Like
But
yeah,
he actually cares. Like there's
Yeah.
an emotional caring. Like
Yeah.
and so that's why I think he has emotions, but it's weird.
yeah.
Like it's not your average
Yeah,
son.
he was like, yeah, my uncle's out like doing like water skiing with the guys today, so it's just me and you this weekend. So I need you to help me with something.
Right. So then we go to the apartment, but when we go to the apartment, we actually flip back to the present. So now we know the difference is no beard present, beard past, and this is whatever plays out throughout this whole scene. So now he kind of shows up and he's walking up the hallway, and then nosy neighbor guy Lou shows up, and you see Jesse duck behind the freaking wall, and he's so like Prison Break melodramatic, the almost feeling,
like unlocking
and then
the
he's
door.
unlocking the door, and then he ducks in, and then at the last second he closes the door, and there's
Well, he was about to close it, then he puts the tape back up and closes it.
there's no way that Lou did not hear the door close, given how nosy Lou is. That, in my opinion, there's no way that Lou, like, you know what I'm saying? He's so nosy.
He's so nosy that he would definitely hear that.
And that was like I could hear it, therefore Lou could hear it.
And Lou was super closer than we were.
Oh my gosh, Lou is right next to it. Anyway, so Jesse goes in, but then it cuts back to he goes to look through the door, and then it cuts to like the past where he's
Todd
looking
is
through the
talking
door.
to Lou about ficuses
And plants, and it's like, yeah, there's over 900 species. Oh, that's so lovely. And
like, what's the difference between a ficus and a tree? Is a ficus a plant or is it a tree?
yeah,
And-
it's just such
Yeah.
a weird and bizarre thing. And then
I think it's just to show you how nosy Lou is, or how
Oh, yeah.
like
And
how he
he's
just looks
just-
for conversation.
But the thing is I think it does a good job, because I think we all know a Lou, and we all have been in conversations with Lou's, and we all actually now know enough to ask questions like, is this a plant or a bush, to get, because that's the fastest way to
Yeah,
make the Lou go
exactly.
away.
Exactly.
And so I
yeah.
think Lou's character is actually really cool. But I also something else about Todd's character is so interesting is humility. He's a very humble guy, and we see that because they discuss the weather, and he's like the radio says it's going to be the weather back when he's still in the cage and it's really sunny.
He's like it's supposed to, he's like they said 40% yesterday,
And then
60% today.
Jesse's like, I don't think it's going to rain. Sometimes they're wrong. So what Todd says, and this is the only quote I think I put in the whole movie, is, I'm not putting myself out there as any kind of an expert, but I do think it will be a beautiful afternoon. But just the way he prefaces himself, like, he doesn't want you to think that he's an arrogant person in some kind of way. He truly is like this humble servant character in his mind, just doing what he's got to do. And I think it was so, that part was like super interesting to me. Anyway, so we go back, and then we're in the past, and
It was like Jesse's has the beard, and
Todd walks in, and he's just, oh, Lou, he's so nosy. And they have these weird windows, right? Did you see like the
Yeah.
windows into the hallway? And it's great. I'm like, who the fuck would live in a place where your neighbors
'cause,
can see you on the couch and shit?
yeah, because Lou was talking to him, and he was like, "Yeah, I heard you talking to someone in there."
But like when they're in the
Yeah,
apartment,
yeah,
you
no,
can
like,
see
yeah.
Lou walking away,
Yeah.
and you're like, and so they had to wait till Lou was gone to hide the fact that Jesse's in the apartment with them. So then he's like, oh, don't you like my place? And it's
Yeah,
all
he was like, I'm thinking about
pastel.
putting some Easter eggs. He's like, I'm thinking about painting it. So Jesse's like, is that what you need me for, to help you paint it?
And then no, turns out it's actually like a murder. He's killed the cleaning lady, who's a super honest lady and all that stuff, real nice, but she found his money, and just because she found his money, she had to die because she knew about its existence, and he couldn't figure out why she was looking up M, and you know.
Yeah, in the encyclopedia, he was like, maybe because she's from Mexico. He's like, she didn't speak much English, so I don't know why she was going through with that. But Todd had his money in the book.
But we can see what's interesting about that scene is that Jesse, in like his almost rational way of being, is like he wants, obviously Todd wants help dealing with the murder, and Jesse just almost can't fathom what's going on. Like, he needs to understand why the murder happened, but in contrast, Todd is like, I can't think about this. We just have to deal with it. Like, it's almost like he's blocking out what's actually happened, focusing on what needs to be done, and just like moving forward through the steps, like to the point.
Jesse was like, what'd she do to you to do this? He was like, And then all of a sudden Todd's like,
He
well,
finally tells him, like, look at the book.
yeah, he's like, if you want to know so bad, look for it yourself. Book
And
right
this
there.
is actually very important because what it tells us and Jesse is that there is money in this apartment. And what's fascinating, like really, really, so it cuts back and we see there's nothing in the books, but then it cuts back again because it cuts back a lot over this part.
Yeah, back and forth between Jesse present day in the apartment. And,
we see how Todd is like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to hide my money somewhere else, and then we can see he's like, it'll require some engineering, but this is gonna be a hiding spot no one will find.
Yeah, because Jesse was like, they have these things called banks.
Yeah.
And then Todd's like,
Cash on hand.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because like the thing was like, because he had them in his books first in encyclopedias, and then he realized that since somebody else found it, he has to do something else to hide it. So that's why the scenes are intertwining, because of it goes to Jesse in present day the apartment looking for cash.
Oh my gosh, he's just tearing the. So the way that scene was shot was really cool. So it's long and you see him do everything, but what they did was they built a camera filming thing way up in the air, and they built the apartment the exact size of the shot of the camera. And then while Jesse, it took him 90 minutes to go through and destroy the apartment in the set, and that was condensed into a 2-minute little thing in the movie of a little vignette of him going really fast. But the most incredible shot is this top-down shot, and you just see it like a rat in a maze, and he's like everywhere, and you just see like 8 Jessies, but it's just a top-down shot of every room in the house of him destroying it. It's really well done. I thought it was something that like just popped out. And
but going back to like the whole thing where Todd was saying the whole thing about hiding the money, like he was just being so nonchalant about everything earlier. Like for example, they just wrapped up the body
in the carpet.
Like, in the carpet, and he was just like, he's like, just picks off the belt. He's like,
so he's got to unroll it, and then it's like he takes his belt off, and he's like, I'm gonna need this for my pants, and he just puts it right back on.
Yeah, just like it's nothing. And then afterwards they wrap up the body, and then Todd's like, you want some soup? He's like, oh, I got chicken noodle, I got chicken and broth. He was like, oh, and I got bacon and bean, one left. You want that? Then he just starts making soup, and that's like while he's eating his soup so nonchalantly is when they were talking about how he's going to hide the money. And that's
Jesse
when
didn't want soup.
Yeah, Jesse clearly did not want soup. He was just like lost his appetite after seeing the death and doing it. So, but then afterwards, Jesse going through the apartment.
He also sees his parents on the news, and he watches that, and they're like, you should turn yourself in because it's best for you. Yeah. And then whatever, he goes back to tearing up the apartment. That's an important
scene as well.
It's just worth mentioning for a later plot point.
Exactly. So then afterwards, like, while he's still there, he just...
Something that is really remarkable is also when Todd and Jesse go into the garage, and you just see Todd like jump into the empty swimming pool like like a little kid goofing around. Like you can almost see this childlike essence of Todd wanting to just have like a cool day, going on. He's not really a malicious person.
Yeah, like showing Jesse like, come on, don't see today as a chore. See it as have fun with it since you're not locked up.
And it's just like it's interesting. Then
they wait for Lou to go bowling, pretty much. Or if you want to go to, if you want to stay in the flashback for.
So they wait for Lou to go bowling. They throw the body off the balcony into the thing. They put it into the car. They drive out, and then you just get this scene of Todd like singing,
like whistling, singing in the car, and Jesse's like hiding in like the back seat with the body. Not in the back seat.
He's in the trunk with the body.
Yeah, the pickup, because it's a pickup with a camper on top, so he's hiding in the camper with the body.
Oh, and then there's his room. Todd's room.
Oh yeah, with the tarantula.
So in the tarantula cage, and I only caught this because the people on Netflix told me about it. If you look in the tarantula cage, it's not just a tarantula. It's got these 2 humans freaking out and crying. And if you look at all the different memorabilia around the room, it's all creepy. It's all weird. It's all torturous. Like it's like that spider's about to eat the people, and they're like, ah! And like that's what so in his private room, that's what it is for fun. And in public, it's like, oh, the nice pastel colors. And that's a good reflection, I think, of the psyche of Todd.
Because at one point, like he was like, how'd you like my room? He's like, pretty bitchin', huh? Yeah.
And then they arrive in the middle of the desert, and Jesse digs a grave, and then Jesse basically grabs the gun out of the car, and
because Todd asked him to go in the glove box to get him a pack of smokes.
Right, and then he grabs the gun, and it's like you can see how At this moment, all Jesse has to do is pull the trigger, right? And it's done. He can basically
But
just
he knows the boy's gonna die too.
right. No, but I mean, still, he can still kill him and escape.
Yeah.
And then it's still a little bit trickier because Todd's gone, and then whatever. But he can still do it. And then he's standing there holding the gun, and just the way Todd talks to him like a little dog that's rabid, like, calm down, buddy.
He's like, you want to go get some pizza?
Yeah, what's your favorite pizza, Jesse? And then Jesse starts like crying. He's like, pepperoni. And then like the gun kind of, and it's just, you can see how broken Jesse is. Like, he's like a broken in pet that's just so compliant with it. And then he gets back in like the car, and then they kind of go back in. And I think that's kind of the end of that scene.
Yeah, because they buried the body. Like, Todd just like, you want to say any words? And like Jesse's like, no.
And then we go back to the search for the money. So finally, Todd finds the money. Jesse finds the money in the fridge, which is really an ingenious hiding spot.
Pretty much like in between
yeah, the fridge door
and like inside of the fridge door. Like, you have to break it open to get to it.
Which is really smart, all things considered. And then these two cops show up, and they talk. You hear Lou talking to them as they come in, and they see how the place has been ransacked. And then Lou distracts the cops, and you see Jesse just like duck behind and go into the room, and he's holding a gun. And then those guys look around for a while, and then one of the two guys, I think it's mustache guy, gets caught by Jesse, and Jesse's like, I'm not a cop killer, I don't want to take you out, da-da-da-da-da. And then he's like, call your friend in here. The friend comes in, they have a little showdown.
Like, Jesse's just like holding the guy back, like with the gun pointing at him.
But he's also got a second gun, and he's pointing it like that, and it's like, whatever. And then they're like, how do you think this is going to play out? We got all these cops around, etc., etc. And then all of a sudden, Lou shows up. And so one of the dudes has to go at Lou to make him happy because it's the cops and it's whatever.
No, first you have to bet how Jesse surrenders.
Yeah, Jesse had just surrendered at this point.
But the thing was, like, as he surrendered, like they tied him up with wire. So Jesse was realizing something's up.
Right, and then he realizes that they're not actually cops. They're robbers. They're all looking for the same money in this place. And Jesse's like, you're never going to find the money. Trust me. I know where it is. If you want it now, I'll tell you. And then you let me out. And then they do. And then Jesse's like, listen, you either let me take this money or you fucking kill me. Now, if you kill me with Noisy Lou out there, you're going to get clipped.
Well, first, the other guy's still talking to Lou. So the thing is, like, while the other guy's talking to Lou, Jesse just grabs a garbage bag and starts putting money in it. And the guy's like, what the hell are you doing?
Oh, one more thing that's interesting. So after the desert scene, it cuts back to the apartment as Jesse does his frantic search. But it goes from like this pure silence. Because one of the things Breaking Bad did was basically not use music. Yeah. Very, very limited use of music. And then the way that intense music just picks in after the stark silence was truly noteworthy. So then, the way Jesse sneaks around with Lou was overdone the second time. I didn't like it. It was cool the first time. The second time I was like, come on, Lou. Anyway, so guy upstairs calls guy downstairs with Lou or whatever, and he's like, guess what? I got the money, etc.
I got the money.
But that guy doesn't really tell his partner that Jesse was there and took money. So Jesse takes a third of the money.
Yeah, because like first, like Jesse starts taking his part. Then all of a sudden, like he's like, you took enough 3 ways. So then all of a sudden, like, the guy, he tells the other guy, I got the money, without mentioning that Jesse took his share. He's like, all I do is keep Mr. Nosy occupied for another 5 minutes. He's like, consider it done.
And so he does that, and basically
Jesse and the guy walk out of the apartment, like outside, and as they're walking to the car, I'm pretty sure
he goes in and he looks up and he sees this car and he kind of recognizes the car, and he's like, the guy's like, oh, I was wondering when you were going to recognize me again. And I'm sitting there going, am I supposed to know who this dude is?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, and who are you supposed to be? And they're showing you brief flashbacks of, like, welding and stuff, and I'm like, it's not really explaining who are you.
And then I guess, like, my problem with it is it made me feel, I had to pause it, and I went and Googled, and I'm like, what's going on? Did I miss it? Turns out, no. this is just relative to this movie. It isn't like a thing, but the way they present it, it's like some Easter egg where you got to go back to Breaking Bad to
Yeah.
figure it out.
And if you even went back to watch Breaking Bad, just all the scenes where he was in captivity, you would have wasted your time because it wouldn't have
Absolutely.
explained it anything.
And then it flows through, and Jesse kind of. Basically, now Jesse's mission at this point after this is to get to that guy, the disappearer is what I called him.
Yeah, the guy who pretty much gives you a new identity somewhere. Not even a new identity. Actually, yeah, he does. Just pretty much start a new life somewhere. And this is somebody who, back in Breaking Bad, Jesse was given the opportunity, but then he remembered Walter and Brock, so he decided to ditch the guy.
Right. And so basically, Jesse goes to some vacuum shops, and then he ends up going to this one, and we see Ed Galbraith basically selling a vacuum to a lady, and then Jesse's like, you're the guy, right? I know you're the guy, etc. And then Jesse pulls up $125K or whatever.
He's like, you know what I'm talking about. He was like, I can't say that I do.
And then basically Jesse puts the whatever down. Finally, the guy's like, fine, because obviously he knows who he is, and Jesse already broke trust, whatever. And Jesse's like, I'm super sorry.
He's like, I know, I'm sorry for what I did the first time. He's like, I know you have rules.
And so basically Jesse, he goes, fine, this 125 is what you owe me for the last time. If we were to do something again, you owe me another one. Jesse pulls up all the money. He's 10 short. Jesse remembers the money from Badger and what's his name?
Skinny Pete.
And then pulls that out of his pocket. It would turn out to be $8,600 or whatever it is.
Well, 88 because of 82 because
right.
He was short 1,800.
That's right. So he's short 1,800, and because of that, deal's off. It's not the right amount.
The guy's like, he's like, can I borrow this bag? Like, he starts putting the money back in. And Jesse's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm putting your belongings back together. He's like, and I'm not taking the 125 that I'm owed.
Because it would end badly if I tried to claim that. You know, if it came after it, we don't want that. And then he's like, so get out of my store. And Jesse's desperate, like, come on, dude, you're full of shit. How could you not help me? And whatever. But the truth is, Jesse is short. That's the issue.
Yeah, he has rules, and Jesse already broke trust the first time.
So then he calls the cops, and
because Jesse was refusing to leave.
And then Jesse doesn't believe him, and he's like, you're full of shit. You know how
he's
I know.
He's like, the cops would call back. He's like, and they try to keep you on the line.
And then right behind the cop pulls up. Jesse sees it, grabs the bag, runs, and then he's like, oh, the guy left. He went north that way. Like, he's clearly being cool.
He's
right?
like, he's like a white male, tall, 6'5", has a tattoo over his right eye of an insect.
And then it cuts to Jesse with, like, the hat on, and it's like, I see what you did there. It shows you how to lie. Use details and flip them. And then he calls him up, and he's like, so a deal's a deal? Word is bond? And he's like, a deal's a deal.
He's like, you'll get your money.
And then he, like, moves on from there. So then we move on, and I feel like we're moving a bit quicker through the scenes, but I feel like also less interesting stuff is happening.
That's the thing,
point.
we're breaking it down because the thing is, there are stuff that, like, are not necessarily, like, important to it.
Well, it's like I don't, like, remember all of the nuances of this part because, like, that vacuum scene took, like, 5 minutes.
Yeah, for example, no, longer than that because first there was the interaction with the lady he was selling the vacuum to, then there was the slow...
No, I would say all in it's 5 minutes.
Oh, okay, it felt longer, though.
But that's it. Like, it was a long scene. And now it did a lot, and then, I'm not saying it was a bad scene. It was really integral to the movie, but he ends up leaving. And he basically then calls his parents, and he knows that they're being watched by the cops.
Yeah, because he tells them, like, where he's going to, like, they're like, turn yourself in.
And he's like, yeah, come pick me up at our special secret place that's probably a few hours away.
Yeah.
And then he's, like, right around the street from his parents' house. He watches them leave. He breaks into the house.
He sees a cop in front, so he knows
So he goes in the back, and he looks at the brick, and then he goes into the safe. And I think he's hoping they just have $1,800 in the safe, but they don't. They have 2 guns. A little dinky gun and a less dinky gun.
Yeah, like 2 like old school. Like one was called a 22.
Yeah.
And the other one looked like one of those like they look like guns that you'd pretty much have as mementos. It's
a Colt Woodsman and an Ivor Johnson hammerless.
According to the internet. He said it was his uncle's. I mean his grandfather's. Sorry, his grandfather's. Yeah, because when later on like it gets said, but yeah, he takes them from the safe and leaves the house, but...
And then he goes up to... He looks in the phone book and he finds out where that welding shop is from earlier because he knows those dudes have 2/3 of the money. So he drives down there and then he does this long walk around the fence scene, and then he climbs up the fence, and then he jumps down from the fence, and then he walks all over, and then as he's getting there, somebody like comes over, and it's a truck, and the giant pimp guy gets out, or the driver, and they pay for a good time with all the perks, and it's like 5 guys with beards doing blow, we find out, and 3 stripper ladies come out, and then they're having a good time, and we see Jesse playing with a cockroach.
And the one thing I remember when they leave, like, I remember one guy is like, see you next week, and one girl's like, in your dreams, and they're like, oh, I can't believe this was a waste, or like, oh, I'm never coming back here.
Yeah, that definitely happens. And I feel like there was a short flashback around here. Oh, there was. This I think the whole time during this scene is the flashback to them setting up that chain thing that he was attached to while cooking.
Oh, yeah, when he's running back and forth, pretty much this is when they're using Jesse as a toy.
So they're at this point, as he's going there, they're now giving us the backstory that gave us the part where, like, you know, why Jesse would know who this welder guy is.
Yeah, because we have no idea who
and
he is.
He's just kind of there, and we see Todd, and we see, I guess, I don't know who the other guy is.
Uncle Jack's like one of his henchmen, I would say.
Right. So he's there, and they're like, okay, do you really think this is secure? He's like, yeah, man, it's so secure you could swing an F-16 off of it, or 15 or whatever. And then they basically make Jesse run back and forth
like a toy.
And it's really it's painful, I guess, to watch, because it really shows the level of fucking, I guess, sadistic crap they did to torture him. And you also see Todd being like, let's not be that mean, because if he breaks his legs,
he's not going to be able to cook.
But what we see in that scene is him not wanting to watch Jesse get tortured like this, and using anything he can to convince them not to torture him. So it's almost like Jesse's survival is contingent upon Todd's willingness to, like, step up. And it creates such a strange relationship, which probably explains why, as Todd is being like, Jesse, I just wanted to get you pizza and have a good time, that he ends up breaking down and crying, because you can see the almost sincerity in Todd's face, also with the fuck man, don't put me in this position situation. Anyway, so that scene goes down, and then after the strippers go and nobody's having a good time, one of them's like, mustache guy's like, Wanda, and she's like, shut the fuck up, dude, you fucking awkward. Now that
you're crazy,
Now that we don't have to fuck you no more, we can just be like, fuck out of here.
They're like, guy, yeah, you had us for an hour, now it's 5 after, so.
No, they had us until 3.
Yeah, now it's 5 after, so.
And then they all leave, and then they get back in the car, and then they drive off, and nobody's happy. And
the guys are still doing blow.
Absolutely, they're having a good time, and then Jesse walks into the room.
First, like, you see, like, the mustache guy just going down, turning down the music, looking at the other guy who was involved in the guys who posed as cops earlier. Like, you're just wondering, why is the music turned off? Then you just see Jesse standing inside the room.
Yep. And then they're there, and he's like, I just need a little bit of money. I need $1,800.
He's like, the 3-way split wasn't, he's like, doesn't do it for me.
And then mustache guy's like, there was a 3-way split? Are you fucking
like, you mean tell me there was an extra third of that money that he got? He's like, it's a long story. He was like, what's a long story about it? Last time I checked, he didn't have any guns.
Exactly. It was pretty funny. And then basically, so you have Candy, coked up guy, basically there, like, okay, Jesse Pinkman, if you want that extra $1,800, my bag's up in the thing. Where's your bag? Well, my bag's in the car up the street. Let's have a standoff. And then Jesse's like Wild West style. He's like, yeah, you have your, because he's making fun of how dinky his little 22 is.
He's like, first when he was laughing at the 22, he was like, he's like, I have some cans in the back if you want to shoot some cans. Yeah, like laughing at it.
Basically, they kind of do their little standoff. And then as Candy Guy goes to do his thing, Jesse's got the other gun in his pocket and blasts him. And then basically they have a little shootout with fucking mustache guy. Yeah. The other 3 guys are just like, oh no.
Jesse just grabs like the first guy's gun as well as the other guy was trying to shoot at him. Then he gets him right in the head after missing quite a few times. And
then he gets everyone else's licenses and is like, oh, you have kids? I know where everybody is now. You better not fucking talk. So now we know Jesse has a surplus of extra cash money that he previously did not have. So he clearly has enough money now
to live off of.
On top of that. So we know Jesse is going to be in a good situation because
he has like $500,000 pretty much.
Yeah.
Or like
And
actually
then
700 considering everything that was put together. So.
then he basically blows up the fucking facility and he's sitting there, and we get another flashback to Jesse having a phone call with some girl that he likes. I can't remember which girl it is.
Jane Margot. Was it Jane?
It was like season 1. It's the one like from the very beginning. He's talking to somebody because it's like when Walt still has cancer, right? So they're at some hotel back in the beginning, back when Jesse's still rocking toques and shit.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we call beanies up here in Montréal. On vient du Québec et on parle français et c'est une toque au Québec. Anyway, so they're in this hotel.
Was it Jane? Huh? The chick from Don't Trust the Bitch film.
I think it might be her because she has her little part later on, but I really can't remember who he was with at the beginning when this scene would have taken place.
Oh, yeah. Now I see. Yeah.
And then they're like walking up and they have a classic Breaking Bad moment of Jesse and Heisenberg walking up together.
Because he just walks out of a hotel room, then he just knocks on the door and he continues walking.
And like the whole movie, you're also going, is Walt going to show up? Like just for a minute? And then he did, and you kind of feel cool. And then they're just sitting there, and it's like really early on. Like they've just made their first batch of meth, and they're at the point when they're looking for a distributor before they get involved with the crazy dude.
Yeah, Gus, because they were talking. Well, Tuco.
Yeah.
Yeah, because first, like at one point, like Walt asked Jesse, "How long would this take to distribute?" He was like around 6 months or something.
And that's like after he's supposed to die, and that's before they escalated, and Walt starts his long campaign of fucking up Jesse's life. But they estimate that it would be like over $1 million worth of meth they would move, and Walt's just like, you're so lucky you get to do something this special like now without having to have lived your whole life, etc. And then Jesse's like, sure, whatever, man. And he's like, you should go to college, you'd be so good at marketing and stuff. And he's like, whatever, man. And it's funny, right? Because he's like, I want to do sports massage like things, and it's almost like Walt just kind of ignores what Jesse wants out of it, even at
and
that
tells
point.
him what he thinks he should do.
And that's just kind of like a huge part of their relationship. And I think it's just really emphasized, like right at the beginning. It's like he never really was supposed to do what he wanted to do. It was like the universe was guiding him, and through Walt.
This is what you should do always. Yeah.
And then what happens after that is like a truck opens up, and we're almost at like the end now, and he's in like fucking Alaska all of a sudden.
Yeah, but I just have to say one thing on that scene. For me, as a fan of the show, I thought that scene was pointless.
Absolutely. It was just a cameo.
It was just there to please the Breaking Bad people by showing you want Walt, here he is. But as a scene, it was pointless. It did nothing to advance.
I would say I disagree. I think it's completely linked to the discussion he has in the next bit with the girl, Jane.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So if you think about it, because when they debate the philosophy, if we jump ahead, him and Jane, and basically the end of the movie is him having a flashback with Jane in Alaska after Ed drops him off, and they're debating the idea of the universe taking you anywhere and being your decisions. And Jesse's kind of pointing out that that's a cool philosophy. It's kind of like what brought him to Alaska. It's kind of like the culmination. And then Jane's like, it's a good metaphor, but it's a shit philosophy. Sometimes it's just better to make those decisions yourself. So if you think about that scene with Walt, understanding the decision making, I do think it served a plot to connect it to that other fantasy moment there.
Yeah, but I mean, like, in regards to, like, having Walt there to do that, I find that wasn't necessary. It was more of just, let's please all the fans that are begging Walt to be in this, because, like, let's face it, Gus wasn't in it, Saul wasn't in it, so, like, they're like, we have to put Walt in somehow and make it somewhat relevant to the story. So based on that explanation of what he was saying and stuff about what Jesse should do to what happens at the end, yes, I find it makes sense into that case. But to jump up into what happened, pretty much Jesse just wakes up in the trunk.
Yeah.
And
got
gets
some heating
out.
lamps. It's not like a trunk. It's more like a hidden compartment
Of a
for
truck.
like smuggling, behind in the back of like an 18-wheeler truck.
Yeah, and like for example, they have those like he had those like heaters in there that like you'd see at like out like balconies at clubs. Like here we'd call them terraces, and like they have something there for like people when they smoke on them to stay warm in wintertime. And he had a few of those in the trunk in the area that Jesse was hiding in. So Jesse just gets out, and you realize that he's in Alaska, which, jumping back to the beginning, is where Mike told him he would start over.
Right. And I wasn't sure because I didn't realize. I guess it was random. He didn't care where he was going, and this just turned out to be random. It was Alaska.
I guess he's like, where are we?
Because I felt like I honestly, because he gets out and he goes, so this is Alaska, huh? So I kind of felt like he knew he was going to Alaska. I felt like that was always part of the arrangement.
Because the thing was, like, I think he just told him where he wanted to start over before.
Right. And so then it just kind of, he drives off and it just kind of leaves it open-ended at the end of it. Like, that's just kind of where the movie just literally just ends with him driving, having a conversation with Jane, which we could say that his relationship with Jane, short of some of the unfortunate ending of that relationship, may have been Jesse at his happiest until it got messed up.
Yeah, exactly. Because you could tell like he wasn't as happy when he was with, I forgot the other girl's name, the one that Todd shot in the head.
Yeah, I don't think it was the same.
No, it wasn't. Like, but the thing was, like, based on Jane, it was just him enjoying life. Like, even though it wasn't the best way to do it, because they were doing heroin and stuff.
Yeah.
But it did show like him finally like being happy with somebody else.
But I definitely could say she was like kind of soulmatey in that regard. So I kind of liked, I guess I like the way it ends then, and it just kind of goes on and it leaves it open-ended. So I guess my first question to you now that because we got into the end of the movie. I don't think
the movie's officially over. But there is one thing I do need to add to this. Some people might get pissed off because they're like, now we want to know what Jesse does in Alaska, but I'm like, do you really?
So that was going to be my actual question is, do you think that this is it? Do you think that there's going to be a series of Breaking Bad spin-offs? Like, and maybe not, okay, so let's say we leave Jesse in Alaska. What's the Skinny Pete story?
Yeah, like...
What's the Badger story? You know, are there opportunities to maybe tell a Mike spin-off? Like just a movie about, because that's the cool thing about Breaking Bad
because the thing is, like,
do you really care where in the timeline this media would be? Like, I enjoyed Better Call Saul, even though it's like a prequel, and I thought that was still cool.
Because also you get to learn a backstory about Mike, and the thing is, even with Better Call Saul, there's still the mystery as to Mike before Better Call Saul. So there's always that thing that they can always go back to. But based on what you're saying about, do we need to see what happens to Jesse now? No. The guy has all the money now, like, not all, but he has like around 600K. Well, sorry, minus. So he probably has around like 300K to live off of. So
say he's got $250,000.
Okay, fine, $250,000. He has $250,000, so he can survive off that, live a normal life. Do you really need to see that on camera? No.
But that's the thing is, on the other hand, what happens if, hypothetically speaking, we shoot a movie 20 years into the future? Because I don't care about his life in Alaska personally, but what about 20 years when he's 45 and he's itching to return to that kitchen? That could be an interesting twist.
That could be, but like, yeah, it's gonna have to. Yeah, but the thing is, like, you're gonna have to see, like, is also the PTSD gonna affect him in that way?
I don't know. I'm just saying, there are other directions. Like, do I personally want to watch Normal Ass Life in Alaska movie? No, I don't. But do I think that there's so much still left in this universe that could be interesting to talk about?
Or pretty much he could be the leader of a new empire because of, like you said, he already learned the ins and outs of the business.
Imagine he gets like a call and it's Badger. Yo, Skinny Pete needs your help, dude. And then it just like kind of go. I'm just throwing random ideas out.
Possibilities, because
like we're saying, like, if you put it like 10 years in the future, it's a more interesting thing than if you do it like, okay, immediately after. Now let him have his like recovery time.
Yeah, because based on that, like, for example, there's that movie Wall Street that they did with Michael Douglas, and then they did Wall Street Money Never Sleeps like 25 years later. And
with Michael Douglas
again, and this is just him getting out of jail. That's how it starts off. So it really was like a continuation of it. Just literally let the time go by of his sentence, and that's what they can do here. Wait like another 20 years.
Well, I don't even know that you have to go to that. I think that, look, we're in an era of franchising, right? So if you're Netflix and you're like these people or whoever's gonna make it, I don't actually know. So I would give this movie like a 3.5 on 5.
Yeah, I would give it like three. I'd give it 3 stars because I feel like it's nothing really like that you just need to see, but it's more of if you're a fan of the show, you
Because I agree. Like, if you're a fan, there's a lot here for you. I think it gives Jesse a more conclusive feeling, you know.
yeah, it's just like to give people who felt
But
unsatisfied with the ending of the show initially.
let's say you're a person watching this movie and you're not necessarily like diehard Breaking Bad fan. There's a lot of parts of this movie that are really dry, but aren't necessarily that rewarding. Like the scene in the vacuum shop isn't as fun as, let's say, some of the earlier scenes in the movie, in my opinion. But because I feel like they do the same tricks over and over and over again, the close calls, the this is,
Yeah.
and it's just like a constant cut, copy, paste across the 3 acts of this movie, and then it just kind of ends real like that. It's just over. And I'm not trying to say that's a bad thing. I'm saying that I believe this would have been a really good season of television. A really good 10-hour, 10
Dragged on
season,
over a few episodes, yeah.
or even a 6-episode, 1 hour.
Like the first season of Breaking Bad was 7 episodes, so
Right.
they could have done something like that with
And
this.
I believe I would have, as a fan of the formats out there, derived more pleasure from
And
that.
it's-
But the way they shot this was really well done.
Yeah, but one thing it's funny that you mentioned 6 episodes because I was actually talking with my friends earlier, before when I was hanging out with them earlier today, and one of them said, yeah, El Camino was great, but I felt it's something that they could have done 6 episodes with, and that's exactly what you just brought up now.
Because it just felt like there were parts of this that were really squished and not that like really in depth. Whereas something like the search scene was really done well and really interesting, you know. But either way, I watched it twice, and I mean, if you're really into cinematography and that side of life, I can see how there's a lot more of a draw than if you're really. It's not to say that the writing of this movie was bad, but the writing of this movie isn't like break your bad worthy. Because here's an example of good writing. I hated Walter White by the end of the show. I hated him so much. Why?
Because of how he fucked up Jesse's life.
Everything about it. And you know why? Because the writing was that good that I felt hatred.
Yeah,
On the
that's
other
what they
hand,
wanted you to feel.
I watched this movie and I felt literally nothing the whole movie in terms of any real emotional reaction. It was more just like, that was nice. So I'm giving it a 3.5. It hits all the check boxes of what it's supposed to be, but like, if you're a Breaking Bad fan, I mean, I would recommend it to you.
But it's based on how you look at it as well. As were you happy with the ending of Breaking Bad, or did you want more? That's the real question of how you enjoyed this. Because
But it's also, is this the more? Because there's the question of, is this really, does this do justice to the Breaking Bad legacy?
well, I feel like pretty much like it didn't need to be made, but it was to satisfy the people who just wouldn't shut up about it.
So it's kind of like a thing that if you caught it and you liked it, like, look, I guess for a segment of people, it's really dope. But I also feel like it runs a risk that it could turn into, if they keep doing it, it would become a bad thing.
Yeah, because there's some people who like it. There's some people who don't like it. Some people who didn't feel that they ended the show right. We're still disappointed with this because they still want more. And it's just like, guys, like you have to realize something. Like too much of a good thing could end up being a bad thing.
Matrix.
Yes. Oh God. Don't.
And guess
yeah,
what's
that's
getting
another
another
conversation.
reboot? Anyway,
Yeah,
that
but
is
that's
another
conversation for another time.
So, on that note, I think we have pretty much pushed this topic as far as we could take it in
Yeah.
terms of without going into new stuff. I'm certain if you guys want us to make more Breaking Bad related content, we can totally do that. If enough of you go review the episodes, we can do something like that. We'll see what's up. Meanwhile, we just wanted to thank y'all for watching this and joining us on this journey through the El Camino Breaking Bad movie. It's much appreciated. Feel free to leave some comments. Let us know what you thought. Like we said, if you make that effort to leave a comment, I'll make that effort to answer you down in that comment section. Like the video if you did. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews and all that good stuff. Special thanks to the patrons: Ismail Gadamsi, Chris Prado, Jonathan Barnes, DJ Black, Hurricane, Linda Williams, and Coney Sparks. They helped us get a new camera. They're the reason this is going to be on Spotify's and all that. They're the reason we're going to have a new website soon. So they're really amazing people, and they get to tell us what albums to review. Like Coney Sparks wants us to review the emo king himself, Joe Budden, with All Love Lost. So that'll be coming real soon. And I haven't gone through half this album so far. Holy crap, is Joe Budden a whiner? It's fun. I like whining, but Joe Budden is a whiner. That's my little, I guess, pre-review commentary. Anyway, I make music myself. You can check that out on this channel. I'd love to hear what you have to think. Somebody actually did recently. Like, I say this every time, and somebody checked it out and left me a comment. So kudos to that person if you end up watching this review. So yeah, thank y'all. Again, I say that a lot. And as I like to end the episodes now, live long and prosper.